Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Dennis Giannoutzis. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutzis.
And so when you said embrace it and not run from it, I always talk about running towards the fire. In other words, that's to embrace it, not run away from it. And being a firefighter, you'd understand I talk about firefighters. What do? Do you see them running away from the house that's on fire? No, they run to the fire, but they're very smart in the way they do it. And as you're saying, things are changing for leaders and that. So the show is called Leadership is Changing. And when I say that title of the show, what does that mean to you, Sean?
Like I said, another great question. And I want to piggyback off your firefighting comment, then I'll answer your question for you. As a firefighter, you're right, I was. And you run to the flames. But the reason you can run to the flames in confidence is you've embraced the process of growing into a firefighter with an understanding of the fire, understanding of how safe you are, understanding who you are, so that you will go into the fire, you will handle it and not be burned. There's even a story in the Bible that talks about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abbananto being in the fire. They went in there knowing who they were, and they didn't get burned. So to move on from that into answering your question, how is leadership changing? Man, I think it's changing in a very large way. This is what I've been teaching the last year, and I believe this with all of my heart. If you are not believable in your field, if you're not believable, people will turn you off in a heartbeat. Because we've never had a time in history where people desired a leader to be believable like now. Your believability on that scale from 1 to 10 will impact everything in your world. So I've been teaching a lot about going from shaky to solid, going from flying from the seat of your pants to being strategic, and from running from challenges to being solutional. So solid, strategic, and solutional. That will increase your believability. And that's what people need to see in their leaders today.
Absolutely do. And they're asking for it. And it's just amazing to see it. It's just getting louder and louder as the years are going on, especially of late, for sure. And you're totally right. There's so many leaders who are what I call, at times when they communicate, they waffle and they come across as not being confident. And they may sit up front and they may put the strategy up of the organization or whatever it is. People don't get it though. People sit there and go, what the heck's this? It's just a PowerPoint slide, or it's on a beautiful piece of paper that's in the kitchen area, Sean, whereby you go and get your coffee and tea and you go, yeah, there's the strategy. People have no idea. But it's not just about the organization to have the strategy. What I'm hearing Sean say, listeners, is that's the fact about you having a strategy, is about you as an individual having a strategy and having that purpose and moving forward in doing what you're doing. So I think that's really important what he's sharing.
Yeah, I have several people that I've coached here and there. And one of the person I'm working with right now is a realtor. And I started to ask her, do you want to be the realtor that everyone can believe in? Not just the realtor that sells houses or can help you do this, that, but are you the realtor that everyone can believe in? Are you the accountant that everyone can believe in, the doctor that they can believe in? Because they don't just want a dynamic personality. They don't want the great vision or mission statement. They want to know that when the sun goes up and the sun goes down, they can believe in you, because there's too many people out there that are shaky, that are in leadership. They're not solid, and we can't believe in them. So our believability has to go up as leaders to continue to have influence and impact on people.
Fantastic. Oh, wow. Listeners, I hope you're taking lots of notes, because what Sean is sharing here is just pure gold in his insights and information. What is a co-CEO? I mean, is that confusing for people? How does that work?
Yeah. So now I'm thinking of your questions. One of them was about what's changing in leadership or what has changed. And I think the co-CEO arrangement speaks to what I think I'm observing about leadership expectations and style in at least the nonprofit sector, but probably broadly. And that's a decentralization and an expectation that there's less focus on hierarchy, more focus on building a cohesive team and a co-CEO structure. We've just found it really great. So my co-CEO, her name is Madeline Holland. She's based in New York and I'm here based in Melbourne, Australia. So we've got a couple of hours crossover each day and the rest of it, we're basically a 24-hour CEO.
So almost follow the sun. So there's always going to be somebody there. There's a CEO there.
Always someone on deck. Exactly. So we hand the baton over. It's been great for crisis management because you can literally I'll take this up until this point and then I'll hand the baton to you and you keep going. Our team is global. We've got people in the Middle East, in the UK, in Canada, in the US, in Australia. So we need global coverage for leadership. So it's worked for that. But it's also, I think, really importantly, kept a relatively flat structure because it means that we've got two kind of CEO reporting lines and then the leadership team underneath us, which we're all a cohesive leadership team together. It means that you can't get into a position where you're dictatorial when you're a co-CEO because you, for one, have to agree. You've got to be on the same page with your co-CEO and you've got to be willing to adjust your position and compromise where necessary. So that kind of sends a good signal to the rest of the organization that this is how really everybody should be operating. Not that we need every decision to be a consensus decision. That's not realistic, but certainly there's an expectation that we're here to collaborate rather than dictate to each other about how it's going to be. And I think, that really does encourage good decision-making, accountable decision-making, and proper consultation to lead into the decisions. So I think that it's a structure that I've seen more in the corporate and nonprofit sector. It's still pretty rare, but it's happening more and more. And I think it also speaks to just a general expectation now that decentralized leadership structures can be very effective. We've seen them be very effective in campaigning. Certainly, if you look at the big movements that have taken off, like Black Lives Matter, for example, that has a decentralized leadership structure. It's not like a CEO of that, bit like that. And that's how a lot of movements have really taken off and made huge impacts, particularly in the social and the nonprofit sphere. Looking at that decentralized leadership approach is definitely a positive. So in addition to having the co-CEO arrangement, our country directors, so we've got a director of each country that we're operating in, they also have a large degree of empowerment to lead in their market. And our leadership team is very much a collaborative leadership team. And we hold onto that very strongly. Yeah.
That's great. So I think that's probably answering the question about leadership is changing and what does it mean for you. I think it's really seeing a different kind of model, not really that hierarchy, but it's more of a collaborative approach and things like that, which is good. And I love it too. There's the real meaning of a tag team, right? Bang tag, you're up now. You go ahead with it, which is brilliant.
Exactly.
Great to see. So this question here is about somebody that could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
Yeah, I reflected on this one a long time, and I've got to say you'll be disappointed in my answer, but it's that I don't focus on an individual. I focused on attributes of individuals, and I've got some names of people that came to mind when I was preparing for this podcast. But in reality, they are attributes of those people, not necessarily the whole. And in the end, what I look for is leaders who are prepared to develop, roll with, and implement change, but critically to see it through. And if there's one thing that irks me are these people that call themselves change managers, because I can identify change with you today on a whole lot of things, but if I'm not there to see it through, how true am I actually being to the change process? And so the leaders that I look up to are the people that see the future, implement the change required to be ahead of the curve, but also see it through in those first couple of years of change. I think that's really critical. And you do that in sports management in New Zealand a lot. You can always find fault in any organization. That's the easiest thing we can all do. Let's face it, in my world, you read about it in the papers if someone thinks your organization isn't doing what it should be doing. But it's those people who can see forward and into the evolution of your organization, but also want to work in that space ahead of time.
Yeah, I reflect on what you're just saying there based on my experience with Hewlett-Packard, right? We had one CEO go, then we had a new CEO. Within 9 months, that one went. And so when the organization's in trouble, what do you do? Yep, that's right, you give it to a woman. And so we brought in Meg Whitman, who is the CEO. She came from eBay and she took over Hewlett-Packard. And we went through that change management. And going back to what you said, Simon, yes, she saw the vision, she saw the future. She put the organization, took the change. And most people thought, oh, yep. So after year 2, did she leave? Nope. She was there right through to year 6 or 7, I think. So she embedded it and made it to happen. And that was what was really fantastic and a big change, which was really great to see.
Yeah, it's a great example. And one of the things I look for in any leaders when I look from the outside is continuity and consistency, and who they are being as a person, but also the life cycle of an organization and the fit with the CEO or the general manager, whatever the title might be, is a really important part of that change process as well. So what does the organization need today? And where does that fit with the skill set of that leader? And you come into, when I've been chairman of an organization, you might go through a phase where it needs a real marketing and innovative approach. And you come into another organization and it needs, okay, the marketing innovation's been done. The PR comms are great. We now need to knuckle down and get the systems and processes in line. So you look at your leaders with the skill set and the life cycle of the organization and where it's at. And so in my day-to-day job now at Rowing New Zealand, we're 132 years old this year. And that's pretty special. But what is the leadership required in that phase now that our athletes are professional athletes compared to even 10 years ago where they were semi-professional and 15 years ago where they were just doing it for the love. So life cycles of organizations and skill sets of leaders is really critical, Mitch.
Yep. Good. Great. Some really good insights there for sure. Now, the program there is called Leadership is Changing, of course. And when I say that, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, leadership's about time. I'm really clear on this one. It's about the time you give yourself as a leader. It's the time you give other people, your colleagues. And then thirdly, it's the time you take to make that important decision. And today we're so pressed into a reactionary world. The social media world wants us to make a decision, provide a reaction in the moment so that we get something wrong, so that we then create more media, which funnels more social media. And I think time as a leader is something that you do not to the detriment of making a decision. And the most frustrating leaders that I hear about from other people who are friends and colleagues in their workplace are the leaders who don't make any decision. They just make it clear that you got to take time to make a considered decision. You make it with people today, not a command and control environment that we've been through. You do have to make a decision, but it's getting that balance right between taking time, giving your time to people, and then putting out a considered response without drifting so long that everyone gets frustrated that no decision's been made.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, Simon's just sharing here with us. I think, to sum it up, you got to take control and you got to be in control. And by being in control, leaders, it's about time for you to think, time to take time out to make decisions that are considered with others. I love that. The fact that we do that with others.
Well, critical with others. So a good leader in today's changing world and in New Zealand right now, it's about consultation and everybody having a view and making sure that they're being considered. And then, as you say, quite rightly, the leader making the decision and owning the decision and fronting the decision and providing that continuity and consistency. But it is about making it with your staff, not in isolation from them. And I've learned over the years that you can get caught up in the last conversation and the last email. And you can make some real mistakes as a leader in making decisions based on the latest information and not all of the information. And it's amazing what happens over a 3 to 5 day period in today's world where you got information on a Monday and by the time Friday came along, you knew so much more and you had so much more context that actually you needed to make a different decision. So it's a really fine balance for a leader of today to get that timing right.
Yeah. Wow. That is so right. So breathe, take some time out and think about it. Make sure you've got all the information here, listeners, which is really great. So Simon,
sorry, Dennis, but also you got to understand who you are being as a leader in that moment as well. If leadership is changing, and what does it mean for me? It's me starting from who am I being as a leader in front of the person that's in front of me now, and who am I being as a leader in front of the person who is in front of me tomorrow. And those groups, depending on your leadership role, will change. And we're not just talking about finance and marketing and the difference between those two groups, but we're talking about individuals and personalities. So you have to understand yourself. So anything that you can do to develop your own personal space, not just your professional space, and become very EQ aware is so critical. I think the transition in leadership and the speed of change today is around EQ, not IQ. Now, many will argue that with me, and that's fine. I'm happy to have that debate, but a good leader has a good sense of EQ.
Yeah, sure does. And I think we're hearing a lot more and more from people, and I've got a question for you later on in relation to employees, but I think we're hearing more and more from people around the world, actually, in different industries, different markets and so forth, that they are wanting to have leaders who are more authentic, leaders who are vulnerable, more transparent. And you and I know that, and in particular this country, that if they have what we call the BS radar on, if they know that you are trying to make it up on the spot, which some leaders do, and people can see through it. So we got to really know what we're talking about, but also be mindful of what's happening.
Yeah, authenticity as a leader is so critical, and they're all nice words, but you've actually got to live them.
Yep.
And so what does that mean to your listeners? To me, that means that you've got to be a listener in the first place with the person in front of you. Have emotional intelligence and work out what that person is saying to you in their words, but also what they're delivering with their body language. How emotional is this versus how factual it is, how much you're responding in the appropriate way, and all those simple communication techniques that you've developed over the years as a leader. People get it. Some people get your response in leadership in the moment, and you're engaged and you come out with a good solution. Other people get it the next day and they go, oh, that's what he was thinking, or that's what she was saying. Everybody takes time to read body language and understand the words and let things sit for a while. So I come back to that theme around taking time and giving people time as well.
You know how you talked about body language and we're seeing how people react and how they take on things. With today, us working from home more virtually around the world because of pandemics and so forth, I know we've got videos on certain tools and things like that help as well. But if they didn't have the videos, how can leaders pick up on people's reactions and the way that things are? What could we do? Any ideas?
I'll give you an example of something that happened to me last week. And this was a new person that I hadn't worked with before, had never met them before, had been introduced by a third party, and they were coming on board with an organization I'm involved with. After the Teams call, which was a group call that talked specifically about technical and commercial aspects, I asked them to stay on the line, and I spent 20 minutes with them just talking. And yes, you could pick up a bit of body language, but you could pick up the signals around a conversation that wasn't work related. So I got to understand where this person was in their life, how much time they had to commit, what was a priority for them, and the work-life balance thing came up. Now, they would never say that in a meeting, in inverted commas. You'd never talk about those things. And so again, yes, it is making it harder for people working from home, but I find that most of our staff want to have a gathering together over a coffee. And so I don't have a staff meeting every week. We have a coffee catch up, and it's a subtle difference where people sit down in a relaxed cafe or meeting room, and the coffee becomes the third party environment where you can talk to the coffee, over the coffee, and with the coffee, rather than to the agenda and the minutes and the previous frustrations of the last meeting.
Yeah, coming from a coffee family, my family would be very happy that you just said that, because they're having meetings over coffee, which is really good. But yeah, you're so right. It's just providing an environment whereby we can break down the barriers and so forth. And I really like what you did there in relation to meeting with that person and actually having some time with them personally, one-on-one, to hear about them. And then, so I think for them, without them being here, they would probably say, oh, here's somebody who's really interested in me, really interested in what makes me tick and so forth, what puts you in a really good position as well. So I think spend time with people to get to know them is really important for sure.
It's a really fine line here in today's world, and New Zealand's catching up to the US, for example, and becoming a lot more litigious. So when you spend time with people, you've still got to have that line drawn where you can't cross that privacy line. You can't cross the conversation into a difficult topic. It's more just very high level, friendly conversation. And just got to, as a leader, you've just got to be so careful where that conversation may go.
Yep. So here's an interesting question for you. Now, this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
Oh my goodness. I think I step back, Dennis, and as I think about this, I choose a set of characteristics and attributes for a leader. So let me give you that and give you the story here. So I think about individuals that are inspirational, that show up authentically, that have a great deal of humility. Those are major character values for me that when I think about my leadership, or not myself personally, but who is my favorite leader. Yeah, an interesting story for you, Dennis, because I don't know if you're a golf person, but for the golf lovers out there, they'll resonate with this story. So I hope we can bring them along on this. So a gentleman named Ben Crenshaw. So Ben Crenshaw, back in his day, he was with Arnie and Jack. He's probably maybe the Tiger of the time. At any rate, Ben was the captain of the U.S. Ryder Cup team. Now, we both know, Dennis, that golf is largely an individual sport. Okay. Ryder Cup is a competition between the United States and Europe that's played every 2 years, right? And it's where the team where the group of golfers have to come together as a team.
Mm.
Okay. So Ben was the coach. He was the captain, actually, is what they're called. He was the captain of the U.S. Ryder Cup team in 1999. Now, if you follow golf at all, and your loyal listeners that do will know this story quite well. So going into the final round on that, and this was in Brookline, Massachusetts, and my husband and I happened to be there. And going into the final round, the U.S. was down 10-6. And Ben's sitting in Europe only needed 4 more points to win the cup. And so Ben's sitting in the media room and he says this, he said, I'm going to leave y'all with a thought. He said, I'm a big believer in fate and I've got a good feeling about this. There's a couple of asterisks I want to add to this, Dennis. Number one, not only was he telling the crowd, I got faith and confidence in my team, even if you don't. And his team was in the back listening. They're like, what's he going to go out there and say about us? So you think about the inspiration that he's giving to them. And you could feel his authenticity. Here's where I knew the guy was an incredible leader. Roll forward, it's a couple years later. And I happen to be in London on business. And it's on a Saturday morning. And I went down to the hotel lobby and I'm having breakfast and I was by myself and came out of the breakfast area. And lo and behold, in the lobby is Ben and his wife. And I thought, I just got to go up. I got to go up and say hi to this guy. So I walk up to him and I said, hi, Ben. Peyton Smith. And he's that. And one of the first things he did, Dennis, he pushed his chair back and he got up and he met me eye to eye and he introduced his wife to me. And I told him what an incredible thing that was in Brookline when we talked a little bit of golf and whatever. So we chit-chatted. We went on about my day, went out. Okay, I come back at the end of the day, walk through the bar. Who's in the bar? Ben and Julie. He comes up to me. No kidding. He comes up to me, wants to know how my day was because he remembered the conversation 8 hours earlier. And I thought a couple of things. Let's tie this back to leadership. I thought, my gosh, how do you show up when the cameras aren't on? There are no camera. I'm just some lowly American walking through the lobby, for goodness sakes. And the fact that he took the time, he was so gracious. He was so respectful of his wife. He was respectful of me as a female. He stood up. I thought, my gosh, I need to learn from this guy. So when I think about authenticity, humility, inspiration, not only did he inspire those group of golfers, and by the way, the U.S. won.
Oh, yeah.
But not only, yeah, I got to get that in there, Dennis. Not only that, but I thought he's inspiring me to be better in how I show up, even on the days off. That's what I took away. And so he's one of my favorite. I love that man.
What a wonderful story. You're so right. Is how we do show up all the time. And it's not just, I think it's even Piggy right in your own home. And you see the way he respected his wife and so forth. And even if you aren't being seen by other people, they know. They'll pick up on it. And it's really quite interesting to see how that happens. And I think what you just said there about how do you show up when the cameras aren't on, that is brilliant. That is exactly the way that as leader, I think that's the leadership piece. That's not I think the camera's on, that's the showman, person piece. The leader is what you just said, is when it's the camera's not on. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, Dennis, I'm a big believer in that. And when, again, the camera is a metaphor. It's when you're not in front of your team. It's when you're in, look, we're seeing actually, Dennis, let's flip to the counter side of this for just a second here. We're seeing some ugly sides of leadership when they don't realize the camera is running.
Mm-hmm.
And you're caught on a hot mic and you're like, wow. And so it is really, truly being authentic to yourself 24/7. Yes, we all have down moments. Certainly I do. But at the core, do you show up with goodness in your heart?
Yeah. Brilliant. I love the story and I love the way that you've just shared that for sure. And I think it's fantastic. Just the way that he actually stood up, looked in you in the eyes, and then, at the same level, but also treated you afterwards as well. I think that's fantastic. And I even think about this as well, is that even if I go to my local cafe, a restaurant, something like that, the way that they treat you. And I think it all comes down to, if we can summarize it, how you treat people is what they'll remember.
Oh, Dennis. My favorite poet is a woman named Maya Angelou.
Yep.
And she has this great quote. It's not what you said or did, it's how you made me feel. And I love what you just talked about, the wait staff. they have a name tag on for a reason. It doesn't take any more energy for you to say, hey, John, whatever their name is, how is your day? Because most people don't do that. So that could be the person at the airport that's checking your bag, person that's taking your drink order, the person, quite frankly, that's delivering your mail, whatever it is. We're all, what, almost 7 billion of us here sharing this thing called Earth, but we're humans.
Mm.
Let's reflect that.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm actually a believer whereby I think that nowadays, because of technology, this is where the people who aren't authentic, transparent, and so forth is being emphasized in the sense there's a big microscope on them because of technology, where they've always been, some people have been like that all the time, but we just didn't hear it or see it. But now a lot of people are hearing it, seeing it, and demanding it to be really good too, which is really interesting. So Peggy, here's a question for you. Leadership is Changing is the name of the show. When I say that term or that title, what does it mean for you?
I think what it means for me essentially is that you don't get there and get a degree and hold it. It is along the lines of it's as good for the minute that you got it. But the minute after that, you have to subscribe to a construct of it being evolutionary. And so when I think about when you say, hey, leadership is changing, I sit back and say, yeah, and it needs to, and it should. And what it means to me is that I have to create that mindset and evolve and constantly think of it that way. Because again, it's not a degree. Like I didn't walk across the stage and somebody go, oh, hey, here's your degree, your BA in leadership. No, I think it should be a BA in blank, whatever the blank is. And leadership has to be a continual thing. You can't subscribe to it once and say, I was a great leader, because the common word there is the past tense verb. Was. You got
Yeah. And it's not ta-da, you've arrived. Okay, that's it. It's not. It's a becoming, and you're going to be becoming for quite a while to actually learn to do that for sure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.